Well, good morning and welcome to another little video. This one I thought I'd do with a focus on the principle that is embodied in the teaching of as above, so below, and the idea of God's will in eternity or in heaven. And heaven's, it's so on earth, but heaven is a term that really, to me, refers to a heavenly state of mind, a mind that has achieved a state of inner peace through the application of principles, or maybe you were just lucky enough to be born incredibly peaceful, or to experience yourself that way naturally. Not that you were ever really born into one of these avatar things. And there lies the conundrum, really. But as above, so below, in eternity, so on earth, the ability to understand and perceive the action of divine will, God's will, through your own fingertips, if you like, on earth. And once you understand, I guess, and I should put my finger, once I understand that everything is divine, that everything on earth here, where I seem to find myself, is a teaching, learning opportunity, then the divinity of it becomes something that takes predominance in the mind as it reflects purely on the choice that I've made to embark upon an action of mind that we call healing, or an action of mind that we call ascension, or enlightenment, or salvation, which is nothing more really than the remembrance of a choice that has been made in the mind and the application of that choice over and over, pardon me, when situations deem it necessary. And of course, that's every time that you lose your peace of mind over something. So as above, so below. As above, let's look at that idea. The idea of eternity where all is one. Right? Everything is a state, and words are a little ambiguous here, but everything is a state of singular expression or singular extension called creation. And you can call it whatever you want, actually, it doesn't really matter, but we refer to it as creation, coming from a single source extending out forever and ever and ever, much the same as on Earth here we have the sun, which is the source of light for our planet, and the rays of the sun, the light emitting particle and wave, forever and ever, which is probably why Egyptians used to worship Ra, the sun god. But anyway, the nature of eternity is that it lasts forever. Right? Eternity means that there is no time. So anyone who's a Course in Miracles student will understand that idea, hopefully. There can be no time, no such thing as time, if eternity is true. You just have to let that sink in for a second. Right? So spirituality, or Course in Miracles specifically, teaches that you are in eternity now, dreaming that you are sitting here listening to a video or making a video, and getting the results of your thinking, doing that based on a choice that was made, or an idea that crept into the mind of the possibility of being separate from eternity, separate from the whole. But the conditions of eternity remain throughout, that eternity is whole, is perfect, and is all-encompassing. Right? So it's God. That's the word we give to it, all-encompassing, everything forever. And of course, what is all-encompassing and what is everything forever cannot possibly have an opposite. Right? So the beautiful introduction to the Course, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists, herein lies the peace of God, is probably, and for most people, I think, probably for me, one of the most eye-opening declarations that you will ever come across in any spiritual text, really. And all it is saying, of course, is that what is true is real, and what is not true doesn't exist. And that, of course, has to meet the conditions of eternity. If it doesn't last forever, it's not real, doesn't exist. And then so I'll sit here and I'll say, well, yeah, I seem to exist. I seem to have a tree, foresty thing around me, and I seem to have a decking that I'm sitting on, and a jumper that I'm wearing, and all of these sorts of things. But nothing here that you perceive with the body's senses, the eyes, the fingertips, touch, smell, all of that, lasts forever. So therefore cannot possibly be reality. It's not that it isn't real, but it's another form of reality. So one of the lines in the course in the Urtext says, the opposite of life is not death, it's another form of life. But once you've been around the sun a few times in this experience of the other form of life, and bumped your knees and banged your head enough times in relationships and situations that seem to push you from one way to the other, pardon me, you tend to start to question life. Why is it like this? Why is the world in lockdown? Why am I sitting at home struggling to find something to do with my time? All these sorts of questions. And I never know what it is that's going to push anybody to their ultimate question, which of course is, what am I? Let's just stay there for a second. I never know what's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. But for me, I felt it my whole life, just like that line in The Matrix. You felt it your whole life. And that's true for me. I felt it my whole life, the ridiculousness and the meaninglessness and the emptiness of the world, a world where nothing does last forever. Everybody dies, and everybody runs around in circles again and again, on the home front, on the government front, like changing the furniture on the deck of the Titanic. That's what it seemed like to me, So the world was always a ridiculous place, and for me, I hated it a lot. I couldn't stand that children in Africa during the 80s, the famine there, 20,000 a day or something were dying because their mothers had no breast milk, babies, and I couldn't stand to look at the food on my plate because of that, and it got me. It really, really got me, and I fell to pieces and began a long, horrific spiral, I guess, down to a very dark place where eventually I asked that question, what am I? But, so as above, so below. The nature of life on earth, being a teaching and learning one, is how love is revealed. The original decision to experience separation from God blocks the nature of true love from the awareness of the perceiver completely. It's as if you have amnesia. You're born here, put into a uniform, sent to school, and you're taught the ways of the world. If you're lucky, you might get a little religious education in there somewhere that will teach you some useful principles about forgiveness and patience and tolerance and being helpful to others and serving the whole. But in the main these days, religion tends to be something I think in the West people shy away from, and with detrimental result. If you look at the skyrocketing suicide figures and skyrocketing state of affairs of the Department of Mental Health in this country. I'm trying to think of the phrase that, mental health, it's gone. But the nature of time and space on earth is for teaching and learning, to learn to use time for what its highest potential is, for what its greatest use is, which is to learn to remove the blocks to love's awareness in the mind that has suddenly realized that it does not want to participate in the world in the same way that it has been doing, and does not want to get the results of its thinking in a cause and effect relationship in the way that it has been doing. And it is entirely possible to return your mind to a state of perfect peace and rejoin, if you like, or reawaken here in this world to the flow of life and become one with all things that happen by learning to let go of preferences and learning to let go of judgment and grievances and all of these sorts of things. And of course, that doesn't mean that you will not continue to have judgments and grievances and things like that, and have situations that push your buttons. But it means that you will learn to use those situations to further your removal of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence within yourself, so that you can continue to participate in the rejoining or reawakening to the flow of love here. So the test then for everything that you think you want or think you need and everything is really quite simple. Do I want this for myself, or do I want this so that I can share it with my world? And that applies to everything. The litmus test is to have all, give all to all, and or to have, give all to all. And that's not a physical giving, although it may look like that in some situations, but it's a giving of the heart, a giving of yourself to everyone you meet equally. And the relationships that you find yourself in initially will tend to be special relationships where you put more energy into one and give more value to one than to another. And so the teaching, learning situations that you find yourself in, which are prompted by a lack of love or a lack of peace in your own awareness, are going to be opportunities then to bring into harmony an equality amongst your relationships. And I don't want to use the word balance, because there's nothing more unstable than the notion of balance. And I got that one from a teacher, Charles Anderson, or master teacher, he's called. If you look up on YouTube, master teacher, you'll find all his videos there, which will be very helpful for you in the retraining period that we call the spiritual path. But the relationships that you find that are presented to you are only to help you transcend the nature of the dualistic mine and yours mentality, better and worse mentality, should and shouldn't mentality, good and bad mentality, right and wrong mentality, because basically nobody knows the meaning of life, and all of these should and shouldn'ts are simply rules that we've made up for ourselves to obey, under the false aspect that they're going to keep us safe or help us to progress or whatever. And perhaps in some sense we have progressed, but I think that we would have just progressed without them anyway, in the main. And it's often said that the only difference between man and the animals is rules. That rules define us. It's like, well, love defines us if we let it. And I don't think rules have done that great a job. If you look at the front page of any newspaper, it's fairly obvious that the rules don't work, or that they're missing the point. And I was having a discussion with a friend of my daughter's the other day. She's only 10 years old, and she's already got her whole life mapped out ahead of her, which I never had a clue what I wanted to do at 10, but let alone 25 or 35 or 45. it just all seems to stumble from one thing to the next. But she wants to be a photographer and do all of this and do all of that, and which I think is great. Photography is a beautiful medium through which to express yourself. But the adamance of this, the drive, the determination was there in a 10-year-old, and I thought to myself, that when I was 10, I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to be happy. So in the course of our discussion, I told her about John Lennon, who was asked by his Year 5 teacher what he wanted to be when he grew up. And he said, I want to be happy. And the teacher said to him, I think that you perhaps don't understand the question, Jonathan. Jonathan said, I think perhaps you don't understand life. And to have that level of adamance and certainty, you can see the two things where it kicks in at a very young age. And I think it's incredibly beautiful. The perspective on life we never really lose it. We never really it's never blocked completely. There's always, pardon me, mosquito, there's always a little bit of light in the darkness of any tunnel there, even if it does seem to be a long way away at the other end. But the nature of teaching and learning is what relationships are for. And you're always teaching what it is that you think that you are. And you don't transcend the world, you don't escape the world until you teach from your truth, until you express and extend the light of your mind in a way that it is, there's a lot of mosquitoes here, in a way that it's beneficent to all. So not just I'm okay, but you've got a lot of work to do. It's like the nature of relationships has to be transformed in my mind to such a degree that my concern about others diminishes. And one of the principles in that also is letting others get the results of their thinking, which is sometimes hard to do because in our fear-ridden state, we tend to think that it's our job somewhere to be our brother's keeper, and it is, but from a different perspective. Our job is to see our brothers as whole and perfect, and in that, be their keeper. Once you get beyond the point where you have realized truth, you have experienced the enlightenment of your mind, and you know for fact that your brothers are whole and perfect, then the emphasis on trying to change someone else or convince someone else of something falls away, and you simply become a voice for awakening that represents a doorway for others to walk through if they so choose. There's no need to hit anyone over the head with a book. And I sometimes think that you become more like a book on a shelf in a bookstore that even this video is really a book on a shelf. You choose to watch it or not. And you walk past all the books and all of a sudden you see, that one, and you make a choice. And what you read and what you get out of the book then determines the way you see yourself and your world. It cannot not, even if it's a little children's book, because ideas are increased by sharing. And by the time you get to a point where you're willing to look at ideas of healing, ideas of joining, ideas of oneness, you're really at the point, whether you've recognized it or not, you're really at the point where your whole world is about to change in a completely 360-degree way. And it's going to be mind-blowing, and it's going to be confronting, and it's going to be whatever it is, and it's an incredible journey. Usually it starts with heartbreak or a great despondency about the nature of life on earth, or something like that, or a suicide attempt, or who knows, whatever. There's often a catalyst there, or a long string of steadily increasing catalysts that will push you to a point, but the tolerance for pain is only so much, I can guarantee you that, and eventually you begin to ask within yourself if there is a better way of things, and then you start to stumble onto ideas of forgiveness and patience and tolerance, more spiritual. And when I say spiritual, I'm talking about mind-activated ideas, or ideas that sit in the mind that actually have a purpose and a use in being able to bring about a new result to your regular thinking, or better, a reinterpretation of your regular thinking, so that you can effect a better result. So, as above, so below. You are free now. I am free now to get the results of my thinking on earth as I am in eternity. And if you want to look at the idea of being born into this place, not that that's true, because you are spirit and you are in eternity now, and that's where the mind eventually, you kind of like line it up to walk the world as a passerby from that perspective. But the journey, or the crossing of the bridge to that perspective, as being a solid point of view to be counted on, and an experience to be counted on, can take some time. And so we have these ideas of freedom that we true up to, and hold ourselves accountable to, for us and for our whole world. And so in that sense, I guess you can use the idea that I was born here free and then put into bondage. Schools, governments, and all of that sort of stuff. And it's not that that's really bondage, because it was my choice. I chose to experience separation from God. I chose to experience the journey of the soul to come here to see what it's like, and I didn't like it. It wasn't fun. It was fun for a minute. There was some fun bits, but the fun bits always seem to be offset by not fun bits, and overall I reached a point, where I decided I don't want any of it. I don't want the fun bits or the not fun bits, because it's all really just shit. And I started to stumble into new ideas. So the idea then that I am free, that you are free, as above, so below. You are free here. Right? The world cannot tell you what you are. You are spirit, whole and perfect, and held in grace by God itself forever and ever and ever. And on earth, learning to walk that, learning to be that, learning to accept that. The path is governed by certain principles and certain moments, certain holy moments that show up to reveal to you that you are actually on track, and they may be accompanied by phenomena, and they may be accompanied by clairvoyancy, and they may be accompanied by all these sorts of things that a true spiritual path presents when the mind begins to open, when the mind begins to release the blocks to its own inner kingdom, to reveal that doorway of light which is within you. And you will find that I find that in meditation, and like that. And it's funny, the idea of meditation. I remember sitting in the meditation room one day many years ago, and I do a standing meditation, a light meditation. Actually, I do a few different ones for different things, but the one I enjoy the most, where I connect the most, is the one where I open my mind during a light meditation and allow the light to pass through me to others, which through these hands, and that's a true thing. I used to think that was kind of funny to watch ministers put their hands on people and they'd be falling down everywhere, but so it happens. But the meditation part of it is part and parcel of where you begin to slow down your thinking, where you begin to still your mind, where you begin to focus on a central I am or God is, or a singular non-talking or non-conscious talking point in your own awareness, and just stay there. And when the mind is less tethered, I don't know how to really talk about this part, but when there is a willingness, a little willingness, I should say, to experience the light of your mind, you'll find it easy to slip beyond the conscious level of your thinking mind into your higher mind, where light is, where truth abides. And that's done through the Holy Spirit, through reopening that portal or that conduit within yourself, where communication through prayer and meditation can again flow. So I got a little off the track there somewhere, but the whole purpose of teaching and learning, the whole purpose of learning that as above, so below, which gives you a guiding point for your actions and choices, the whole purpose of that is to have an experience. The whole purpose of any spiritual determination is to have an experience of self, which we call enlightenment and everything. Not just so you can become an enlightened arsehole like me and continue to carry on like a pork chop, but these things fall away. But so you can transcend or get beyond the necessity to visit the Bardo states after death and be rechanneled back here to complete your learning circuit. Because who the hell wants to do that, really? No, thank you. But if the mind is not experienced, if you are not holding that golden ticket, and if you are not, how do I talk about it? It's like the gatekeeper, St. Peter. You get to the pearly gates and St. Peter, you can't get through the gate. St. Peter's going to ask you, where do you think you're going? And if you're standing there saying, I don't know, back you go. There's no heaven and hell kind of, Well, that's about it. The journey of the soul just goes on and on and on and on and on. It's like, get your golden ticket. Forgive yourself for everything you think. Let go of the world in its entirety in this moment. And you'll learn to begin, or you'll begin to learn what it is to walk the world as a passerby, bearing the gift of the understanding that God's will is done in eternity as it is on earth, because you will become a part of that will. You are God's will. You are the extension of God. You are the kingdom. And learning that and walking that is an incredibly joyous thing. Sometimes it's incredibly upsetting, usually at the beginning, but just keep asking myself, would I rather be happy or right in this situation? Would I rather be happy or right in that situation? And if you think you'd rather be right about something, well, maybe come and watch this video in another 12 months and see how that went for you. All right, I love you. 30 minutes it says on the thing. That's a long one for me, just babbling on. I hope you're all enjoying lockdown. Don't take it too seriously. Remember to laugh, it's just a dream. And if you have to take it seriously, do so. I mean, I've been looking at a few things during lockdown and contributing and buying back into the dream and doing all sorts of stuff, specifically so I can see if I'm being honest about where I'm really at, with the idea of being free of the world and my willingness to forgive myself for my judgments about things. I mean, it's easy to sit on the surface and go, there's no world. It doesn't matter. What are you talking about? There is no world. But that doesn't mean that the world isn't hiding somewhere in a deep, dark pocket of the mind that, is waiting there like an anchor to show up at the pearly gates when you get there. It's like, no. So seek for the blocks and find them. Seek for the blocks and find them. The blocks to love's awareness. It does no good to hide away in your house for 25, 30 years and pretend the world's all good. Or to hide away in your house for 30 years and study scripture. You have to get out there and put it into practice. You've got to see where you're really at with things. And man, it's... for me anyway. All right. Namaste. I love you.